Good for you.
Okay, I have to regain composure.
If only you knew what we were talking about during the break. Alexander's blushing.
Okay, anybody want to change the subject, Judge? Would you like to leave us off with any of your profound thoughts for the day?
Thanks to my wonderful team for having me on their show today.
It is wonderful always to have you. Seriously, we have a few seconds. Any thought?
How about watch Fox Business at 4 p.m. David Asman and myself after the bell. There you go. See how the market closes today. It's been a wild one.
Good stuff. And there you have it. Okay, we are back live tomorrow at noon Eastern time. Thank you for joining us. And now here's Harris.
We'll begin with this Fox News alert. The White House is now launching an all-out defense of the president's VA nominee as we go outnumbered overtime. I'm Harris Faulkner. From President Trump on down, the administration is defending Rear Admiral Ronnie Jackson. That is the president's pick to lead the Veterans Affairs Department. This amid allegations that as the White House doctor, Jackson oversaw a hostile work environment, improperly prescribed pills, and possibly drank on the job. Again, those are allegations. Watch
I would definitely stand behind him. He's a fine man. I'll always stand behind him. I'd let it be his choice. But here's a man who has just been an extraordinary person.
This is a person who has received praise from 2 different presidents, 2 different parties over the course of a significant amount of time, and 2 people that have spent a lot of time with Dr. Jackson.
And if you were watching, you know yesterday on Overtime about this time, Republican Senator Jerry Moran sits on the Veterans Affairs Committee, told me about a conversation he had with Admiral Jackson before appearing on air with me. Watch.
My question to Admiral Jackson was, tell me what's out there that I ought to look at that either shows that there was misconduct or that there wasn't misconduct. And he knows of he indicated to me, he knows of no Inspector General's report, nothing that is out there that would confirm or deny the kind of rumors and allegations that are circulating his nomination at this point.
Chief White House correspondent John Roberts joins me now from the North Lawn. John?
Harris, good afternoon to you. The White House continues to insist that it is up to Dr. Jackson whether or not he wants to continue with the confirmation process. But the White House throwing its full support behind him, at least for the moment. The White House yesterday releasing some fitness reports, fit reps, job performance evaluations of Dr. Ronnie Johnson here at the White House Medical Unit that includes some laudatory comments from former President Barack Obama. In October of 2014, President Obama writes, a most impressive leader who continues to perform at the flag officer level. Ronnie has earned my confidence and the gratitude of my family for his diligence and knowledge. Promote to flag immediately. The president writing in October of 2016. Ronnie does a great job. Genuine enthusiasm. Poised under pressure. Incredible work ethic and follow through. Ronnie continues to inspire confidence with the care he provides to me, my family, and my team. Continue to promote ahead of peers. And then laudatory comments as well from President Trump, who wrote Dr. Jackson is a great doctor and leader, 2-star materials. While it was Republicans who put on hold indefinitely Dr. Johnson's confirmation hearing, one of his chief critics is Montana Senator John Tester, who said this recently.
We need to be able to do our job, and we need to get to the bottom of these accusations to find out if they're true. And so they're very serious accusations, whether it's a prescription drug handing out like it was candy, or whether it's intoxication, or whether it's toxic work environment. The reports that we have heard is he treated the people above him very, very well. He treated the people below him very, very poorly, thus creating the toxic work environment.
Referring to the allegations that Jackson was over-prescribing medication, Tester referred to Jackson as, quote, the candy man, which brought a sharp response from the White House Legislative Affairs Director Mark Short earlier today. Listen here.
It was absolutely unfair for him to drop the Candyman line. I think that there have been multiple, every year they come in and they do a review of the White House Physician's Office on things like prescriptions. And every year they've said that he's totally in compliance with what he's been prescribing. And so no, it's totally unfair.
Yesterday at the news conference, in response to my question about Dr. Jackson, President Trump said repeatedly if he was the one who was facing what Jackson is facing, he probably wouldn't go through with it. A lot of people thought that was giving Jackson an out. But after an Oval Office meeting late yesterday afternoon with the president, Jackson has decided that for the time being, at least, Harris, he is going to face the long knives head on.
John Roberts, thank you very much. The question, though, looms today with the new allegations. Is Jackson's nomination in trouble? And what are we supposed to make of the glowing praise he received from President Obama and prior administrations? Republican Congressman Mike Kaufman sits on the House Veterans Affairs and Armed Services Committee. He's also chairing the subcommittee on military personnel, so a great person to talk to about this. And in fact, I was reading you are the only member of Congress who served in both Iraq wars. Sir, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with just the track record leading up to this on Ronnie Jackson and other presidents who have praised him, and whether that should play a role in as we look to his confirmation.
Well, what should play a role is his complete record book, his complete military history, his personnel file. Starting from the time he entered the United States Navy, certainly to his service in Iraq, supporting the United States Marine Corps, and then obviously his duties in the White House. What's probably more relevant is his military career before the White House in the United States Navy. And so I know there's a lot of hearsay stuff going on, but let me tell you what is most significant is what he will do as the VA chairman. The last three had extraordinary backgrounds, but they all failed to change the culture of incompetence, bureaucratic incompetence at the Department of Veterans Affairs. The question is can he be, as a Marine Corps combat veteran, can he be Marine Corps tough in cleaning house in the VA? In 2014, we gave the authority to the Department of Veterans Affairs, to the Secretary, to remove, without all the civil service protections, senior VA bureaucrats. Secretary McDonald never used that authority. Secretary Shulkin never used that authority. Will he go in there in programs run by these senior bureaucrats that year after year have had documented failures and just clean house? That's what we need.
Yeah, have you had a talk with him? I was speaking with people yesterday, one of them from Kansas, Senator Jerry Moran, who was saying that he had just met with Ronnie Jackson. Is that something that you're doing?
Well, it's something that I've asked to do. I know that I'm a House member. His priority is Senate confirmation right now. I want to sit down with him.
But information is good no matter where it comes from on the Hill.
Oh, yeah. No, I've certainly reached out to him to talk to him and to, as a member of the House Veterans Affairs Committee, as a military retiree, Marine Corps combat veteran, to lay down what needs to be done there that hasn't been done. I don't care how great his background is. If he's not going to be tough in cleaning house, he will fail in that job.
Representative Kaufman, it seems almost impossible to get somebody to run the VA effectively.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had people die on waiting lists under the past administration.
Sure.
I mean, it is a mess. Is it a point where you would say to him, if you don't think you can change things, step aside? Should he withdraw? Because the last thing you need at the VA, I would imagine, is distraction. But I don't want to put words in your mouth. What would you do?
Well, the question is he going to be tough? I mean, the fact is that President Obama just wanted to cover up the problems. Well, I think you just got to sit down with him in his testimony. The issue is he going to clean house or not? I mean, nobody's gone in there and given the current authorities to fire people, senior bureaucrats, has not used that authority. Is he going to use that authority to clean house for those bureaucrats that have documented failures through Government Accountability Office reports, through VA Office of Inspector General reports, well-documented failures? People haven't been fired. People haven't been held accountable.
Sure.
And is he going to do that?
Right now, the confirmation process is on hold for him. And I would ask then what should be happening in the interim. I know you say you want to reach out to him, but what else? What to make of these allegations? And they are purely that, allegations.
Well, I think it's unfortunate because you've have been in the military. I'm subcommittee chairman for military personnel. There are ways that conduct is formally documented, and he has no formally documented problems. These are all hearsay things by disaffected subordinates, and so I think that's really problematic, and that's not the way we function in the military. And so they are held accountable, certainly, by their conduct, but this is all just rumor control, and so that's the sad part about this.
Interesting. I'm reading now from your statement, I expect Admiral Jackson to face the same amount of scrutiny for the position in the Senate as any other nominee for a cabinet position. We'll be watching for it. Sir, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
For more, let's bring in Christopher Nywaim, a contributor to The Hill, also an Iraq War veteran, a former Army military police sergeant, and a Republican strategist. Great to see you today.
Good to see you, Harris.
If we could just for a minute put the politics aside and look at what you need. You just heard the Congressman Kaufman talking about what you need in terms of leadership. They need to be able to fire people and to utilize the tools put into place. But what do you need at the VA?
You need a strong leader, and the president sees leadership attributes in Admiral Jackson, and that's why he's putting him in there. The last several VA secretaries have not been able to fully fulfill that mission. We've got serious issues still with getting access to health care, getting the bureaucracy managed, and he sees leadership traits here, and so that's why he's putting him in there. And it's ironic because I respect Senator Tester. I think he does a good job as a senator, but he should know better than to go on to CNN and go on to the national news with just allegations and use the term Candyman, because there was a real Candyman at the Toma VA, a doctor that, thanks to President Trump getting the VA Accountability Act through, was fired, and a veteran got killed under his tutelage. So this is serious stuff. We need a good leader in there, and so I think we're going to have to look at these things, and they're allegations. We don't even know if they're true yet.
What is the VA dealing with right now today that someone would need to step in on? I mean, we know about the wait times, but there are certain issues that people may not know about.
Well, we need to get the right balance between getting the VA strong where it's competent and allowing veterans to have choices to do other health care options if they can't get in a timely manner. Just here in Washington, D.C., the VA hospital a few miles from the Capitol, veterans are still being offered appointment times weeks and months later than they should, which is outside the scope of the law. We've got to get that right. We've got to be able to get veterans through the bureaucracy to get the health care, which is good once you're able to receive it. So we need a leader in there that can manage through that, work with Congress to get that funding through. And I think that Admiral Jackson deserves the vetting process, but it needs to be fair. We can't have an accusation in stupid terms like Candyman that are completely unverified when we actually had a real Candyman that, thanks to President Trump's leadership, we were able to fire.
Talk to me about the morale right now with regard to leadership inside the VA.
I think it's confusing. You've had a lot of presidential appointees that want to get the job done. They feel like they had some tension with the former secretary, who I think tried really hard. I think he's a smart guy. But he faltered, you know, so we've got to get someone in there that has the president's full confidence, that can implement this agenda of getting through the unions, getting through a process where you can remove folks that do a bad job and put in leaders that can get things done. It's a huge bureaucracy. It's a tough job, but the president sees leadership traits in Admiral Jackson. He deserves to be vetted, and I think he's going to get the opportunity to present his facts. And, hey, where were the Obama people if an alleged, pill popper was running around doing these things? So I think he's not getting a fair shake right now.
Yeah, real quickly, I want to lean in on that just a little bit, because both presidents, President Trump and Obama, and even previous presidents, have given this current nominee glowing remarks. But clearly, he had a track record, potentially, since there was an inspector general report about it and interviews done with regard to that. Why didn't the past administration step in on that?
And we could do a whole hour on a lot of the things the past administration should have done better. I think that's a great point. But ultimately, even if there are true or there's context to things, people can make mistakes and come back and do great things and be big leaders. We've seen that time and again with people across industries. I think he's got potential. I think he's got the president's support, and he deserves to have a vetting process and not have senators go on TV over allegations and make pejorative remarks without getting the facts right. I don't think that's fair, Harris.
Christopher Nywaim, thank you very much. We appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you.
New details about the Columbia law professor James Comey asked to leak his memos. It turns out that Columbia law professor worked as a special government employee. Where? The FBI. Why we're only learning about this now and what it could mean. And the president of France addressing a joint meeting of Congress today, and the Iran nuclear deal in his remarks as he tries to convince President Trump not to leave that Iran deal. Whether we could see a new deal and the potential fallout if our president walks away.
They restarted, they're going to have big problems, bigger than they've ever had before.
If Iran threatens us in any way, they will pay a price like few countries have ever paid.
Fox News Alert, French President Emmanuel Macron addressing a joint meeting of Congress today. He talked about the Iran nuclear deal after President Trump signaled yesterday his willingness to consider what Macron called a new deal with Iran. that would address shortcomings in the existing agreement. Macron is hoping to convince our president not to abandon the current deal ahead of the May 12th deadline. Watch.
We should not abandon it without having something substantial and more substantial instead. That's my position. But what I want to do, and what we decided together with your president, is that we can work on a more comprehensive deal addressing all this concern.
That was happening as Iran's president was going after ours, saying that President Trump's experience and asking tradesmen how a tradesman can make judgments about international affairs. That was Iran's leadership. Chief congressional correspondent Mike Emanuel is live on the Hill. So now we're hearing back from Rouhani in Iran, and he's going after President Trump.
A lot of feisty language there, Harris. This comes as President Trump has made clear he is not a fan of the current Iran deal, and there's a May 12th deadline on the horizon. French President Emmanuel Macron received about 30 standing ovations in his nearly 50-minute speech to a joint meeting of Congress. The French president's calling for a new deal to strengthen the 2015 Iran agreement, suggesting something more comprehensive that would also go after Tehran's foreign meddling from Syria to Yemen and its ballistic missiles. The fear from the French perspective is President Trump walks away from the Iran deal and the international community is left with nothing on that issue. Macron was very clear on this point.
As for Iran, our objective is clear. Iran shall never possess any nuclear weapons. Not now, not in 5 years, not in 10 years, never.
On the issue of climate change, President Macron made note that that is one area of disagreement he has with President Trump, the French president noting there is no Planet B, and he also made this point about the Paris Agreement.
With business leaders and local communities, let us work together in order to make our planet great again and create new jobs and new opportunities while safeguarding our Earth. And I am sure one day the United States will come back and join the Paris Agreement.
Macron has a French accent, which you could clearly hear and as you would understand, but he is clearly very comfortable in English and was able to make his point very comfortably in front of all those American lawmakers. Harris?
Mike Emanuel on the Hill for us. Thank you very much. And yesterday, President Trump issued this warning to Iran.
It's a bad deal. It's a bad structure. It's falling down. Should have never, ever been made. I blame Congress. I blame a lot of people for it. But it should have never been made. And we're going to see what happens on the 12th. But I will say, if Iran threatens us in any way, they will pay a price like few countries have ever paid.
Those strong words from President Trump and some of the conversation about Iran really has fallen down political lines. So I want to bring in now a top Democrat, Senator Ben Cardin of Maryland. He is a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Senator Cardin, thank you for joining me today. Let's start with this idea, which seems to split along party lines, that the Iran deal is bad. Your thoughts?
Well, I'm not sure it does split along party lines. I oppose the Iran deal, but I think it would be a mistake for the United States to unilaterally withdraw from the agreement if Iran's in compliance. I think a lot of my members who voted against the agreement agree with what I'm saying, that we don't want to walk away from an agreement. So I think what the president of France was saying was that we can expand it. We can certainly get together to counter Iran's behavior in supporting terrorism, in violating human rights, what they're doing in regards to ballistic missile violations. The Congress has already given the president stronger sanctions that he can impose in those regards. Working with Europe, we could effectively elevate our pressure on Iran on the non-nuclear side. And as the president of France said, and I agree, Iran has made a lifetime commitment not to become a nuclear weapons state. We certainly can enforce that.
Yeah. Okay, we can't even do really effective inspections on the ground from everything that I'm reading. So I have lots of questions about what we think we can enforce Iran to do. But as the moment is right now, we're talking about potentially rewriting the deal, and you're saying expanding the deal. I want to start with where we are with the current deal. Have you read the side deals? Do you know what's actually in this thing?
I certainly do. At the time we had to vote on the Iran nuclear agreement, I can assure you that I was read into all the material that was available, both open source and also classified.
Do you think that there is material in that the American people need to know about? And I say side deals because maybe you can redact some of it, but don't you think before this president moves forward, since Americans have indicated through polling and otherwise that they really would like to see this taken a look at, is there more that we can learn?
Well, you raise a very valid point. The IAEA, that's the inspecting arm that goes into Iran, much of their work by agreement cannot be made public. So there is information that's not known. But I can tell you this, the IAEA and the American intelligence community believes that Iran is in compliance with the agreement and that there's been adequate opportunities to inspect. Can we do more? Absolutely. Do we have to make sure Iran doesn't cheat? Absolutely. And we have to enforce this agreement very strictly.
All right, so you're talking about an intelligence community, the inspectors on the ground, but you voted against this deal. So there's something stinky in it. And my question for you is, wouldn't it be better, according to our current president, to relook at this, pull back from certification on May 12th, and look at what you can get done outside? They got a lot for sitting down at the table.
Well, look, my main concern was that this agreement, although it's lifetime on not being a nuclear weapon state, the specific restrictions have sunsets. What happens after those sunsets? And that's what we're talking about now. How do we make sure that Iran never becomes a nuclear weapon state?
Do you think that other members on the Hill would go for something like this? I mean, if the president could get a better deal that puts America first, as he has said, is that something that he could get support for on the Hill?
Oh, absolutely. And as I said, 99% of Congress voted for additional sanctions against Iran in regards to their ballistic missile violations and their support of terrorism and human rights violations. We clearly want this agreement enforced. We're prepared to give the president additional tools to enforce the agreement. What I think Congress will not do is that we will not pass legislation that would violate the Iran nuclear agreement so long as Iran is in compliance.
All right. Real quick question about North Korea, because we expect the conversation to toggle back to that as the French president is visiting Macron today. Where are you with supporting this president and sitting down with Kim Jong-un?
Oh, I'm for diplomacy. I think that's the only effective way to end this program. If you use military, the consequences could be catastrophic. So I'm for diplomacy. I applaud the South Koreans for using the Olympics to start these negotiations. I support the president's contacts with Kim Jong-un. I support his sending a cabinet-level official to meet Mr. Pompeo with Kim Jong-un. I think we need to have diplomacy, but let's not be naive. Kim Jong-un, you can't trust him. You know that you're going to have to verify.
Well, the president has said that.
Well, absolutely. So we've got to be clear-eyed going into these discussions and recognize that we have to have realistic objectives, and we got to be very strategic in getting that.
Senator Cardin, the president has said if he sits down, he'll get up from that table if it looks like certain things are not being done. I appreciate your time today, sir. Thank you.
My pleasure. Good being with you.
The United States Supreme Court is hearing arguments on President Trump's travel ban for the very first time today. And there are reports several justices may have indicated how they may rule on this. Judge Andrew Napolitano is back from our first hour of Outnumbered and the couch to weigh in on all of it. I have lots of questions. Stay with us.
I think we deliver real, honest, strong opinion day after day, night after night on Fox, and the viewers expect that. They know with me they're going to get a straight shooter, no holds barred. I'm not going to cut people slack, but I'll also be fair. It's a place where we have real debate, and we really respect the traditions that made this country great.
The Supreme Court hearing arguments on the third version of President Trump's travel ban for the very first time today. The administration is arguing the ban is in the best interest of U.S. national security. Critics call the move discriminatory since it impacts mostly Muslim countries. The justices voted in December to let the policy take full effect until they come to a conclusion in the court. And they took the rare step of making an audio recording of today's proceedings, the arguments that were going on, available immediately, same-day release. Here's Associate U.S. Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito. Watch.
I think there are 50 predominantly Muslim countries in the world. Five predominantly Muslim countries are on this list. The population of the predominantly Muslim countries on this list make up about 8% of the world's Muslim population. If you looked at the 10 countries with the most Muslims, exactly one, Iran, would be on that list of the top 10. So would a reasonable observer think this was a Muslim ban?
Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano is with me now. So you have had, since the last hour when we saw each other on Outnumbered's couch, the opportunity to listen to those same-day recordings. And you have a conclusion, and you never do this sort of thing. Tell me what it is and why.
That the president's travel ban will be upheld by a 5-4 vote, with the traditional liberals voting in the 4 and the traditional conservatives 4, plus Justice Kennedy being the 5th vote. I don't like to make this kind of a prediction because often questions by the justices do not reveal how they truly feel. But having read the transcript as well as listening to the tone of the questions, it is very clear to me how they feel. This is not an evaluation of the wisdom or political propriety of what the president did, but just whether or not he has the authority under the Constitution to do it.
All right, that seems cut and dry. So what did you hear?
I heard that the 4 liberal justices, Ginsburg, Kagan, Sotomayor, and Breyer, are concerned that this targets Muslims, and that concern is born out of some of the more incendiary things that the president said before he was president and since he's been president. I heard the conservative majority saying we're not concerned with what he said, we're concerned with what he did and whether or not he has the authority under the Constitution to do so. That's about as clear-cut a clash as you can get.
Well, and normally with these things, there's some distance. But you say that the importance is that we kind of get to hear it in real time because then you know the follow-up question. So my follow-up question would have been, with 2 countries added, North Korea and Venezuela, and that list is kind of morphed along the way anyway in its journey, that list of countries. As you heard Justice Alito saying, this is a very small percentage of countries in the region that are mostly Muslim, and then when you break it down, the population of Muslims is very small too. Why is that important?
Well, sometimes judges and justices ask questions to lawyers to test their knowledge of the law, to stretch where the law is going to go, to try out new theories on them. Sometimes they ask questions because they really believe the core aspect of the question. I think that Justice Alito, whose question we just heard, was put to Neil Cahill, a brilliant lawyer who was the government's chief lawyer before the Supreme Court when President Obama was in office, was trying to say, even if I accept everything you say is true, that Donald Trump hates Muslims, he's only singled out fewer than 8% of the Muslims in the world. Can't he do that?
Well, and look at the countries that we're talking about. I mean, and you can put Venezuela on this list, too, because the economy down there has has pulled people into the streets out of desperation, obviously. But when you look at Yemen and Syria, those are countries whose government right now, they're war ravaged. Their governments right now, we are leaning in to see, well, can we trust them to do the vetting that they need to do?
Let me tell you one of the most interesting and challenging, more interesting and challenging questions I heard from Chief Justice Roberts to the same lawyer representing the challengers. Suppose the intelligence community said to the president that 20 Yemen agents were about to enter the United States and set off biological weapons. Would the president have the authority to stop everybody from Yemen? Answer, yes, of course he would, but we're talking about visas, not biological agents. This tells you how the justices think, that the president's authority, whether they agree with how he exercised it or not, in foreign affairs and in national security, is broad and deep.
Yeah, most importantly, you say that those votes for the president are 5-4. According to what you heard on that tape, those recordings and having seen the transcripts.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about the DACA program. And a
Right.
judge today saying, as I understood it, it could open the door now, his ruling could open the door now for new DACA recipients. Where does this put the president?
It puts the president in a tighter box than he had been in, and a wish to negotiate a permanent DACA deal with the Democrats. Right now, DACA, which is Deferred Action on Childhood Arrivals, we're talking about infants that came here.
So new children can come now, according to this judge.
Well, he stayed his order for 90 days. The two previous judicial opinions on this said if you're in DACA, Donald Trump can't kick you out. This is the only one that said if you qualify to enter, he's got to take those applications, but he's going to hold it up for 90 days.
So in the 90 days, the government can, the White House can appeal. Will they, and what should that look like?
I am sure they will appeal. I don't know which way the courts will go, but I know exactly how the president feels on this. He wants a permanent fix with the Congress. He doesn't want to be writing the laws.
Do Democrats want that?
Yes, they do. They may not want what he is asking from them in return for it, but they want it. Correct.
Judge Andrew Napolitano, breaking it down as you always do.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
You're
Great
welcome.
to see you twice. The fallout continues over fired FBI Director James Comey's decision to leak sensitive memos through a friend to the press. Well, it turns out the person he leaked to, that law professor at Columbia, had acted as a go-between for Comey on those leaks and been a special government employee status at the FBI previously. Should we have known that detail? Catherine Herridge live next. Wonder if he'll take these on his book tour. There are some new questions for the former FBI Director James Comey, as Fox News has learned new information about the law professor who provided details of Comey's private memos to the media. Now Daniel Richman confirming to Fox News that he worked as a special government employee for the FBI on an unpaid basis. Here's Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan on the House Oversight Committee about it.
The Oversight Committee and the Judiciary Committee interviewed Jim Rubicki. And during that deposition, it was brought out that Daniel Richman, the guy who information was leaked through to the New York Times, had this special status called Special Government Employee Status, where he could sort of come and go in the FBI. Which may not mean much, but it seems kind of interesting. The guy that Comey leaks to is a good friend who had this sort of unfettered access into the FBI.
Looking into it for us, Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge, live in Washington. Catherine?
Well, thanks, Harris. Fox News first contacted Daniel Richman on Friday about his special government employee status, and he declined to comment. And then we got additional information about the scope of his work and the nature of his work, and we went back to him late yesterday. And to his credit, Richman confirmed that he did work as an SGE, or special government employee, under Director Comey. Sources familiar with Richman's work at the FBI said he was assigned to special projects by Comey and had a security clearance as well as badge access to the FBI here in Washington. During his Senate testimony last year, Comey only described Richman as a friend, not an FBI employee.
My judgment was I needed to get that out into the public square, and so I asked a friend of mine to share the content of the memo with a reporter. Didn't do it myself for a variety of reasons, but I asked him to because I thought that might prompt the appointment of a special counsel. And so I asked a close friend of mine to do it.
One of the things that Richman emphasized to Fox News is that his position at the FBI was unpaid. Then he referred the rest of our questions to FBI Public Affairs. As you know, Harris, for some context, Comey's handling of the memos and the presence of classified information are now the subject of an Inspector General's review, Harris.
Well, and it furthers the question, too. He wouldn't have been the only person to know whether or not information was born classified, because he was talking to another person who had been an FBI agent for a period of time, if you want to say it that way, since he had the clearance and access. What is the reaction?
Well, the FBI declined to answer specific questions about Richman and his special projects role at the FBI, but Fox News understands Richman was also sent talking points on the Clinton email investigation. An FBI spokesperson emphasized that over the years, the Bureau has had a number of SGEs, or special government employees, and that no one, as the congressman inferred, has unfettered access to the Bureau. Comey's publisher did not respond. Another special government employee who has certainly come under scrutiny was Hillary Clinton aide Huma Abedin. Senator Chuck Grassley, who chairs the Senate Judiciary Committee, among others, has previously questioned Abedin's special status that allowed her to work at the Clinton State Department and private sector entities at the same time. In a statement, Republican Congressman Mark Meadows weighed in on this issue, and he questioned the arrangement at the FBI. That statement reads in part, it isn't just that he gave these memos to a friend, he gave them to another FBI employee he handpicked to act as a special government employee of the FBI. The question becomes, how many other people did he give these memos to? And that's a particularly important issue that we are investigating right now, Harris.
All right, we can't wait to hear the results of that as you learn them. Catherine Herridge, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Well, we've been waiting for it. Former FBI Director James Comey will now be sitting down next with Fox News for an interview with chief political anchor Bret Baier. Bret joined me yesterday. I told him we would watch, and now we will remind you. Catch it all tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern on Special Report. Republicans holding on to a closely watched seat in Arizona by just an edge, but they won. Whether this shows the reddest of districts could be up for grabs at all this fall, our power panel will weigh in. Stay close.
No offense to this candidate, but she's not Donald Trump. That was a different election. I don't think you can compare those two. I think the big story here is a Republican won. It doesn't matter whether you win by 25 points or 2 points. A win is a win, and she's going to be in Congress, and the Democrats not.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dana Perino. We are waiting for the White House briefing to begin amid growing questions over the vetting process of Dr. Ronnie Jackson, President Trump's nominee to head the VA. Senator Bob Corker joins me for a reaction on that and on the fate of the Iran deal after the president of France says today that we can't get rid of it. And disturbing reports out of North Korea about a partially collapsed nuclear test site. We have a live report out of South Korea on that on the Daily Briefing.
Republicans are holding on to an important Arizona House seat today. After last night's special election, Debbie Lesko won by 5 points in a district President Trump won by 21 points. Meanwhile, Republicans are hoping to unseat Democrat Senator Joe Manchin in West Virginia, where a new poll shows a tight race between the 3 GOP candidates in next month's primary. Let's bring in our power panel, Zach Buchanan, a former senior advisor for the DNC. I like the way he always nods, like we'd confuse him with anybody else. And headed the rapid response team for Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. You must have really been busy. Amos Snead is founding partner of S3 Public Affairs, served as press secretary for then House Republican Whip Roy Blunt. Great to see you both, gentlemen. First of all, the significance of the win in Arizona last night for Lesko.
I think if you look at this, I mean, look, Democrats are motivated. Republicans know that it's tough out there right now. But if you look at this, they got to win. Republicans held the seat, and they're going to have that vote in Congress. I do think it's a warning sign from now to November, though.
Zach?
Sure. I mean, look, Republicans breathing a sigh of relief would be like Democrats breathing a sigh of relief if we almost lost a seat in San Francisco. So, I mean, what this represents is a 15-point swing to the Democrats, which is actually larger than the average swing to the Democrats that they've gotten over the last 8 special elections. There's been about a 12-point swing to the Democrats. And so I agree that Democrats are motivated. Republicans are a little depressed. And we're seeing this in the special elections. And it portends pretty good news for Democrats and pretty bad news for Republicans come November.
You know, I thought it was interesting when Sarah Sanders, the White House press secretary, was talking about the fact that, you know, these candidates in the Republican Party are not Donald Trump. So they may be able to eke out wins in those areas, but he is a different type of candidate on the ground. Why is that important?
I think if you get outside of the D.C., New York bubble and actually talk to people across the United States, you know, they're not completely obsessed with all of this news cycle and different news every couple of hours changing topics. So I think if you look at this, I mean, really, I think Republicans have heard the warning signal. They know it's going to be a tough fight out there. And I think if you look in this race in Arizona, the NRCC and all the political campaigns, they knew they couldn't take their foot off the gas.
So do you yoke yourself to the president? He did so well in certain states.
I think it depends, Harris, what state you're in.
There it is.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about West Virginia. That's an interesting state because I thought by now maybe Joe Manchin would have been like courted by the Republicans to join their side.
He was. He was,
but
and
even more so now. But let's take a look at this new Fox News poll. Look how popular President Trump is compared with Joe Manchin in West Virginia. What does that mean to you, Zach?
Well, look, I mean, I think that what it shows is that Joe Manchin is the perfect candidate to be running in West Virginia. He supports President Trump when he agrees with President Trump. He disagrees with President Trump when he doesn't agree with President Trump. And on key issues, like, for example, the Republican tax plan, which the recent Fox News poll show is deeply unpopular with the American people. And so he's right in the place where a Democrat can get elected in West Virginia. Let's remember that he ran the ad about the climate change bill where he took a gun and he shot a bullet into it.
Yeah.
That's the kind of candidate he is. That's why he's going to win in West Virginia.
But even so, and I want to put a fine point on this, this is among likely GOP primary voters. So if he's hoping to get Republicans to vote for him, this may actually put more of a focus on the three who are running in the primary. Because maybe he's not really an option for Republicans.
I think you're right. And Harris, you've watched many of these different elections. I think Republicans could take the Senate seat if we could not have all of this infighting. You know, these three are running neck and neck. And I think if there was one strong candidate, if Manchin doesn't switch parties.
Talk to me, though, about infighting versus competition. Because, I mean, we've seen presidential races with, like, everybody get in.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, last cycle, what did we have?
On both sides of the political aisle. You get in, you get in, you get a car, you get a car.
Get your friend.
Yeah, but so you don't see it that way?
I think right now, the longer that all three of these candidates stay in and that someone doesn't come out as the leader, the more it helps Senator Manchin.
So Republicans are running ads against Blankenship. Why?
I think, well, if you really look into that, I think I'm a Morrissey supporter. I think if Patrick Morrissey had the shot here, he could take out the Manchin seat if Manchin doesn't switch parties between now and November.
He certainly won't switch parties. But look, this is a perfect storm that's brewing in West Virginia. A pro-democratic environment. We have an anti-Trump energy that's out there. Manchin is really good for West Virginia. And there's a brutal Republican primary. These are all the conditions needed for Democrats to keep the seat.
But some Democrats thinking that maybe he has a little bit of an identity crisis at times, Joe Manchin. I mean, that's fair.
He is West Virginia first. That is the kind of senator that West Virginians want. He is not tied to the Democratic Party. He's not tied to any party. He's tied to West Virginia. That's how you win in West Virginia.
Zach Pecanis has his air thumb going. He should hire you. It's always great to see you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll be right back.